And then if you keep scrolling down, these are things, you know, that I make frequently, Instagram posts, Facebook posts, and then there's some other things that, of course, you can make that I've mentioned already. So if you want to get to your designs, again, you can go to this section right here. This will have all of the designs that you have made in the past. So I recently made you know, an announcement about our book award winners, about our Pride Month activities, et cetera, et cetera. And I just want to mention that I didn't come up with this design all by myself, or, you know, this design all by myself. I make heavy use of templates, and we're going to talk about that today. And that's probably one of my biggest tips for you, is to utilize Canva's templates. They take away a lot of the work for you, and this makes things a lot less stressful. You do not have to be a graphic design expert to use this website. Canva is the graphic design expert, and you get to benefit from their expertise. I see a question in the chat: how long are your designs saved for? Honestly, there is no limit. They don't delete them. Like this design, let's go to the very front right here. This is over, you know, a year old. This is, well, I guess that one's not over a year. It's, you know, it's over 6 months old. Some of these are over a year old. So they never go away. They will be saved forever unless you delete them. And then that's actually kind of hard to delete designs for Canva. Like, it's not something you can easily do. So you don't have to worry about that. So this is, you know, an archive of all of the designs that you've created. And you can always refer back to them. If you click on them, you can open them up and it will let you edit them again. So this is not set in stone until you actually download them as, you know, a JPEG or a PNG, and those are not editable in Canva. That's not how I should have said that. In any case, they're saved here and you can always come back and edit them. If you download them, that's like a static image. You can pop that into another program and edit it, but I would just come back here and edit what you've already done. If we move back to the side here, you'll see the brand kit. Now, I'm using the free version of Canva rather than Canva Pro. However, and the free version is awesome. But if you are a registered 501c3, if your library is, you can apply to get the Canva Pro for free. You know, since VTLIB is a government entity, we're not a 501c3, so we are not eligible for that sort of offer. But if you are, you can apply and maybe get the Pro version for free. However, the free version is awesome, and honestly, I never find myself wanting or dying to have the Pro version. I think if you are a really big organization with lots of people, that would probably help, but it's just me in here most of the time, so it's totally fine. But if you see this little crown symbol and upgrade, that means that they want you to get the Pro version. And to do a lot of brand stuff, you do need the Pro version. So if you wanted to upload, you know, branded fonts from your specific organization or your logos or anything like that, and you have the Pro version, you could keep them all here. The only thing they would let me do for free is upload one of our colors. This is our official state of Vermont green color. So I have uploaded that one because I use it quite a bit. And if you follow us on social media, you will know that we use that quite a bit. But that was the only thing I can do. So we're not going to spend too much time on this today because I imagine that most of you will be using the free version. Along those same lines, this is more for bigger organizations. If you are collaborating with a bunch of other people on making things for your library, if you're just kind of a one-person team, this isn't going to be super useful. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it. Again, to get more team functionalities, you do need to upgrade, but that is an option. You can have multiple people in the Canva account on your team. You can collaborate, share designs with each other, etc. So it's a cool feature, but a little bit outside of the scope of today's class. Now, if you look at the handout that I shared, I haven't taken advantage of the folders option, but I really should, and I really recommend that you guys do as well. Instead of keeping, you know, all your designs will still be here, but like when I scroll down, you could see a ton of different designs, lots of different topics, things I started and didn't finish, things I did finish, and it would be better if I kept them all in organized folders. So you can create different folders to save previous designs. So this would be, you know, purchased as if you know, bought a stock photo or something from Canva. You can like designs and they'll show up here. Everything you've uploaded to the website will be here. So you'll see that I've uploaded pictures of books that have won, logos I needed to use for graphics, all of that sort of stuff. And you can also find this uploads here. Again, 5 million ways to get to the same place on Canva. You can get back to all of your designs. These are ones that you've deleted. I'm not sure how long, 30 days. Okay, so if you delete something, it will stay in the trash for 30 days before they will delete it forever. So if you accidentally put something in the trash, no worries, just go and retrieve it. No big deal there. So in the past, it seems I have put things in previous design, and I'll show you how to move things to folders in a little bit. But again, I really recommend that you use this folders functions to organize all of your stuff. To create a new folder, all you have to do is do that, name it, and then create folder, and it will show up right here. So you can have one for book sale graphics and one for, you know, signage for the library, whatever you want. Oh, let me let this person in. Okay. Now this is if you're using that team function. If somebody on your team shares something with you, it will show up here. We're not going to talk about that too much today. Now these are your uploads. Once again, this is if you are uploading a photo that you need to use in your graphic, a logo you need to use in your graphic, anything from your computer. You will have the option to do this when you're actually in the Canva design tool. You'll be free to upload stuff there, or you can upload stuff right on this tab. All you have to do is go here and retrieve something from wherever you stored it on your computer. Another one of my tips is that you keep at least one graphic folder on your actual computer. I like having it on my desktop because it's just easier to find that way. So you can keep also your previous downloaded designs in there. But if there are logos that you're using frequently, I would keep them in there. They'll also be saved in this uploads thing. You know, I also don't think they delete things from here either. Some of these were uploaded a really long time ago, so they will stick around. But it's nice to have things easily accessible at all times. And, you know, if something happens to one of your Canva designs here, you know, you always have it somewhere else too. And if you click on one of these, you can move your uploads to one of those folders you created. You can move it, you can download it, or you can put it in the trash. So manage those pretty easily. These are your likes. So this is just an example one I popped in here the other day. If you're going through stock photos that Canva offers, if you're going through icons or anything like that, well, I'll show you when we're in that. If you go here and you click on like, they'll all show here, so you can save them for later. And you can retrieve stuff from your likes when you're in the design tool as well. All right, again, previous designs, 1 million places to 1 million ways to get to the same place. Create a folder again, you can present a folder, and then rename, delete folders, all that sort of stuff. And then this is your trash. You delete something, you come here, have 30 days to get it out. All right, let me look at the chat very quickly. Mary Lenny says there's a Canva for educators version as well. That's free. Yes, good to know. I forgot to mention that. I think they're mostly public librarians on the call today, but if you are affiliated with a school or something like that, you can have Canva for Educators. So Meg says, I'm probably jumping ahead, but yesterday I created a design. I downloaded it as a JPEG, which is all I needed, but somehow it wasn't saved. I uploaded the JPEG for future reference, but of course can't edit it. So how do I make sure I'm saving as I go? I thought it did automatically. Canva is supposed to save. Canva, when you are in the design tool, will save it automatically, and it will show up in your all of your designs. If you are downloading something onto your computer, you want to make sure that you're saving it rather than opening it. And I think that's what happens sometimes. And we'll go over through that as well. And just a quick recap, uploading versus downloading. Uploading is when you retrieve something from your computer and put it onto a website. So when we are going here and grabbing something and putting it onto the website, that is uploading it from our computer to another place. If we're downloading something, we're getting whatever it is, an image, a graphic, whatever, from somewhere else and putting it onto our computer. One uploading is one way, downloading is the other way. So we will, after we finish our design that we make together, we will go through saving them and all of that sort of stuff, and maybe we can find out what happened. Meg says, I recommend logos as a separate folder. For sure. We, on our shared drive, we have just one folder for logos, and we actually have to use a bunch of different logos, so we have different folders for those too. Will you include how to share with other accounts and how to edit those if we can? I'm not going to talk about the team functionality too much today, but I can definitely work with you at another time with that. I actually haven't used the team functionality ever, honestly, because I haven't needed to. But I believe there are some awesome tutorials about how to do that from Canva itself. So that is a quick overview of this stuff right here. Now I want to move to these items up here before we delve into starting to create our own design. So templates, again, this is what makes Canva so awesome, is that they have all of these pre-made templates for you to use. Some of them you have to pay for if you are using the free version, but many of them are free. And once again, I never find myself saying, oh, I wish I had Canva Pro to get that. No, the free options are awesome, and there are tons of them. So no matter what you want to make, there's a template for it. So here's some categories right off the bat. Social media posts. You want to make an Instagram post, Facebook post, Twitter post, it's all right here. And the great thing about Canva's templates is that when you say, hey, I want to make a Facebook post, it's going to open a blank square for you to work in that is the correct size for posting on Facebook. If you do a Twitter post, it's going to open a blank square for you to work in that is the right size for Twitter. So you don't have to worry about getting the right dimensions for each platform. Canva has already done that for you, which is fantastic. You can also make things like invitations, cards. If you need to make a presentation for a meeting, you can do that here. Flyers, once again, infographics. You can also make charts and graphs. You can find that in a different part of the website that I'll show you in a second. But that's a pretty cool feature that I haven't taken advantage of yet that I'm really excited to try out. For folks who may be in the schools, there's lesson plan templates, worksheet templates. And then this very last column here is for things that lots of people are making right now. So we're all home in quarantine doing work meetings. There's a way to make Zoom backgrounds, greeting cards, all of that sort of stuff. So again, this is another way to get to templates, but you can also find them here as well. You can search for them here. Again, 100 different ways to get to the same place. If you go to the Discover drop down right here, you'll see those awesome stock photos I mentioned. Those are all right here. You also have access to those once you're in the design tool, which we're going to hop into in a second. But this is one way to get started. So if we go to our free photos here, you can search for things right here. Trending photos, ones that people are using a lot, they're going to show up here. And remember, I mentioned that you can like photos to save them for later. If you hover over a photo, you can just click that little heart and it will show up in your likes folder so that you have it for later. Another thing you'll notice when I hover over is that it says free here. So we're in the free photo section, so all of these are free. But if you're in a different category where free and paid photos are mixed together, if you hover over and it says free, it's free. If it's not free, it will have 3 little dots. And when you try to use it in a design, Canva's watermark will be over it. And then you'll know, like, oh, if I really want this, I will have to pay for it. If you click on an image, this is another really cool thing about Canva. It will allow you to download it here. I looked this up because I wasn't sure, but if there is a free image on Canva, depending on what the source is, and this one is, for example, is from Pexels, you can use it in other places. So the copyright for these free stock photos from Canva is very loose. You know, you wouldn't be able, you shouldn't sell the photo that you got for free from Canva, kind of self-explanatory, or, you know, use stock photos from Canva to make other images that may be offensive, but they are very lenient. You can find the licensing information for photos and all of that kind of stuff on the website. I won't talk about that too much today, but if you really need, you just want to post an image instead of going through making a whole graphic, you can grab them from Canva and it's no big deal as long as it's free, you know, and covered by that license. The other cool thing that you can get, oh, and here's, you'll see free to use. If you click on that little eye, that's how you're going to get to your license agreements. This right here is really cool. Canva will pull out the, you know, main colors from your image and provide you with the hex code right here, which is a really cool feature. We're going to talk about hex codes in a little bit, but for right now, I just wanted to make you aware of this. So if you're designing a graphic with this picture and you want to have your text be in a complementary color, all of that sort of stuff, you can just pull it out from here. So that's a good thing about using Canva stock photos. It's not going to do that if you upload your own picture to Canva, but I think there are other tools that will pick out colors from photos you upload online, but I, at the moment, do not know what those are. All right, icons. So icons are different from photos. They're either illustrations or they're sort of, they look like clip art. So you'll see here, whoops, that free and premium are sort of mixed together. These are ones that people are using a lot right now. You see the little $ premium. That means you have to pay for it. And then this one is free, don't have to pay for it. Click on that. You can like these as well. You'll see the licensing information there. And once again, it's going to provide you with the hex codes for the main colors that are used in the design, which is really cool. So we're not going to talk about this much today. You can create business cards, etc., and Canva will, I think, work with another vendor, third-party vendor, to print them out for you. I've never done that before, so can't speak to it. But if anyone has, feel free to pop it in the chat. Apps. There are sort of two different types of apps on Canva. One big category of apps are basically photo editing apps to like change the filter or what it looks like. The other category of app, it involves third-party websites. So for example, you can connect your LinkedIn account and you can make something in Canva and have it post directly to LinkedIn or something like that. You can connect QR code apps to easily get QR codes onto your graphics, whatever. We're not going to talk about apps too much today. And then features. Once again, that graphs and charts section is a really cool feature. And there are also templates for this too. So this is just a brief overview. But anything, you know, you don't, why did it log me out? Hey. Okay, well, you can make graphs and charts. We weren't gonna go over that anyway, so we're gonna move on. Photo editing. So the photo editing capability of Canva is in the design tool itself. There isn't really like a separate photo editor. I wouldn't recommend using Canva if you're just looking to upload and edit photos. There are easier websites to do that. So I really recommend Canva for making graphics and stuff like that, rather than just using it to edit photos. But if you are going to use a photo in a graphic, you can edit them in there. Once again, your Canva is really trying to help you out. They have a design school that has courses that you can take about graphic design. There are tutorials. These right here are short little videos that give you a nice little snippet of how to do things. They have a blog that talks about design, marketing, and branding. So Canva is giving you lots of resources to learn. I would definitely take advantage of those. Some of them are really like legit. They have a lot of stuff going on in them. Graphic design basics, social media mastery, presentations to impress. And I believe that, you know, these are all free. You can move at them on your own pace, and yeah, easy as pie, very easy. All right, and then lastly, I'm gonna go back here. Lastly, right here for pricing, once again, I'm using the free version right now, this right here. Canva Pro is, you get more stuff basically. You're basically paying for the license to get all of that sort of stuff you would have to pay for a la carte, and then more Teams capability and all that sort of stuff. And then other options here, Canva Pro for nonprofits, I was talking about before. For education for nonprofits, you can apply to get a free Canva Pro account, and then this is for really big businesses, so we're not going to talk about that much today. All right. Let me make sure that I covered everything that I wanted to for right now. I believe I did. So let's hop in the chat. Let's see. Not into. So Jennifer, how to share designs between individuals in Canva? I'm not sure what you mean there. You can expand on that. Does anyone use Canva to create a monthly paper calendar of library events? If you do, pop it in the chat. That's definitely something Canva can do. So if you do that, you can. Meg says, yes, giving credit from the folks you got the stock photo from is very nice. They ask you to do that. They're not gonna, come hunt you down, but it is a nice thing to do. So that is a great reminder. Thank you. Allison says, I've created business cards and downloaded them. It was a bit tricky to get them to print to the Avery product I bought. Not as easy as Word, where you can plug in the product number. That doesn't surprise me. Canva, I'm sure, wants you to use their printing service to print your business cards. So I'm not surprised that they made it difficult for you. But that is good to know. Is there a best template for infographics? So you can make infographics on Canva. I've actually never used Canva to make an infographic. So if somebody has, please pop that in the chat. There are lots of tools to make infographics like PictoChart, etc. But I've never used Canva to do that. So if you have, pop it in the chat. I would be interested. Can you include a clickable link in your designs? No. That is one of the, we can test that too. You cannot do that. So when you download Canva designs as a JPEG or a PNG, that is a static image, and there is no clicking capability of it. You also can't select text. You can't select text that is included in the Canva graphic. So one of the things we're going to talk about when we get to accessible design is making sure that you add alt text to your Canva designs, because the screen reader is not going to pick that up. So if you should never just post a Canva graphic to your social media, because folks with the screen reader, folks who need a link, it's not going to work. You're going to need to add a caption to it to give them that extra information. And I'll show you an example of something I've recently posted to our Facebook in a second. Let's see. Kate said, I just made an infographic about being an ally. Kate, I would love to see that. Please email that to me. Mary Linney says, I've used it for infographics and it's great. Awesome. And if you're using something like Constant Contact, you can add a link so the graphic becomes clickable. So things like email tools like Constant Contact that do have that capability, but if you're just creating graphics like in Canva, there isn't. All right, let's move on. For right now, I want to show you the editing tool when you go to make a design. So if you know exactly what you want to make, there's probably a template for it. Today, we're going to work on making a Facebook post because, again, I think that's what most folks are interested in using. But there are, of course, lots of other options. If you need to make a graphic for some other site or program and you know what dimensions it has to be, you can put in custom ones here. And once you do, you can click Create Design, and it will give you your little white square in the right size for you to work in. But today, we are going to make a Facebook post. So when I click that, it's going to open a new tab right here. And this is what it is going to look like. This is your beautiful blank white square, blank canvas for you to work in. And before we start doing that, I want to talk about some of these things on the side here. And again, there are plenty of videos talking about these elements. So if I am not explaining in a way that makes sense, I hope I am, but if you need more information, there are tons of videos about this for you to go look for. So right here at the top, you will find templates that Canva has already made for you. So you'll see ones that people, use a lot here. Ones related to the seasons, birthdays, trending events, things right here. And once again, if you hover over it, you'll see whether they're free or not. For example, this one is free. This one is not. If you click on these 3 little dots here, it will give you some more information about it. You can also search for templates here. When I was trying to make my Pride Month graphic, I wanted to see if there was something already made. And again, this is Pride in a different way, proud of your country sort of stuff. So it might take a few tries to get the right keyword to get what you want. But I ended up doing LGBT and I saw these 2 options here. So I ended up altering this one a little bit for my Pride Month graphic. If you click on this right here, you can search for templates that have a color you're looking for. And you can also choose templates in different languages, which is very cool. If we move down here, once again, this is another place to get to those stock photos. 3 little dots will tell you more about it. You can add to your likes here. I guess you need to pay to add it directly into one of your own personal folders, but again, it's easy to get to your likes, so just like it. Free, this has, again, the licensing information, so if you ever are concerned, just go over there. It's really spelled out easily. Elements here. So right at the top, you'll see kind of trending things like icons related to coronavirus, all that kind of stuff. But the real meat of the elements are grids and shapes, frames, stickers, charts, all that sort of stuff. You can find your illustrations here. A grid is if you want to organize your photos in a certain way. I don't think we're going to use that in our graphic today, so I will pull that up. Say you wanted to have 2 photos, top and bottom, like this. You can just go over to your uploads. Okay, you know, this doesn't look great, but for example's sake, you can just drag and drop them in and it will set them up in this grid. And if you click on them, you can move them to show what you want to in the design. I'm going to undo that. And you'll see at the top, Canva will save your design automatically as you're working on it, which is a really nice feature. And it will show up as you're working on it. It will show up in here. We haven't put anything on it yet, but once we do, you know, you'll be able to pick it out in all your designs. It's already saved it. Different shapes, easy if you want to add a little spice. Frames for photos are sort of like grids, but lots of different shapes that you can choose from. And again, you can drag and drop either your photos or stock photos into those. Stickers. So the thing about stickers is that you'll see this is moving. Photos don't move. So when you download this, it's actually going to be a video. So I wouldn't recommend using stickers on your Canva graphics unless you're willing to deal with that. Just my 2 cents on that one. I have not used them very much. I don't know if a state government entity should be using ice cream stickers, but maybe, you never know. Charts here, you can find them. Lines, there are a bunch of illustrations. You'll see that this is, you know, elevated from your regular clip art. You can make really nice, sophisticated stuff with the things that they have readily available to you. And you'll see that so many of them are free. Moving down here, this is where you're going to find your text. So you'll see on the handout, one of the things I recommend using is Canva's font combination tool. So Canva has already combined fonts here that go well together. So you could use something like this and then put your own text in it and do it that way. But if there's one, you know, specific font that you want to use, you're finding it right here, you can pop it into this tool, and then it will tell you what things would be awesome to go with it. So that's a really cool tool that I quite enjoy. And then in terms of other things about text, go back here. If you sort of want to pave your own way here, it will give you different sizes of text. You can pop in and then you can change the font. So Canva has its own sort of special fonts in here. There are fonts that are reminiscent of ones that you might recognize, like Arial and Times New Roman. They aren't called that, but they look like that. So just keep that in mind. But there are lots of different ones to choose from. Again, if there's a little crown, that means that you would need the paid version to access that. But again, there are tons of free options. I never find myself missing that. Here's where you change the size, easy peasy. Here's where you change the color, right here. For some fonts, they will let you bold it or they won't let you bold it. They may not let you italicize it. It kind of depends on the specific font. I do get frustrated with that sometimes, but I guess that's the price you pay for not having to do much work. This is the alignment. This is to make it uppercase, all uppercase, or uppercase and lowercase, add a bullet, letter, line height, all of that kind of stuff. Whoops. See. This will move it to wherever you want to. You can also drag it like you would on any other program. This is going to change the transparency. So you'll see as I make the transparency lower, it's getting fainter. And then if it's 0, you can't see it. 100, it's normal. Oh. Huh, I never noticed that before. Maybe you can link to external websites. See, we're learning together. Huh. So I may have to correct myself there, whoever asked that, because that is news to me. Whoops. We may have to try that when we create our own graphic. Cool. And then here's to get rid of things. So if you're deleting the element, it's just going to delete part of it. If you delete the group, it's going to delete that whole group. All right, moving down away from text, music and videos. We're not going to talk about those too much today. We're just going to talk about more static images. Again, if you do add music to something, or you do add one of these stock videos to it, it's going to have to be downloaded in a video format, and you'll know because there's this little play button here. You'll see. I don't know if you guys can hear, but it is playing the music that I selected. I don't use that too often because I don't like really dealing with video files in this sense. Okay, moving down, backgrounds. So you can, if you just want a solid color, you can find that here. If you click on this, it will bring you up to this big gradient here. And again, it's going to give you an option to put in a hex code, and we will talk about that in a second, to find specific colors that you may like. If you discover a color that you really like and want to save it for later, it will be saved in like a recently used color section, but you can also make note of the hex code and go back later and retrieve that specific color. They also have backgrounds that they have made for you. So this is one I was playing around with yesterday. You can either use this straight up and then add text or whatever. You can also use these tools up here to change it. These are some of those photo editing apps that I was mentioning earlier. I think I have to connect. Here we go. So see, some of them change it a lot, some of them don't really change it at all. I'll kind of, I don't know. I don't use these very often. I find that the backgrounds that they have are pretty good on their own. If you ever want to get back and you're like, oh, why did I do that? I want to get rid of that. You can also do this undo button here and it will take you back here. If you're like, oh no, I accidentally undid something, I didn't want to do that, you can redo it. It will only do like the most recent thing you've done though, so be careful with that. Don't be hopping back and forth too much. So you'll see there are tons of free backgrounds to use. Some of them you do have to pay for, but you know, a lot of them are free. You can always just use a normal color, up to you. Then once again, another place to find your uploads that we talked about earlier. So they're all here too, and you can also upload straight in the design tool as well. It's going to open the files on your computer and you can just pop stuff in, and then you can get to your folders again. I think to get to your folders that you've created in the design tool, you need Canva Pro. They just, you know, they have to make things a little bit difficult for you to try and get you to spend some money. But that's why I recommend using that likes folder, because remember that little candle I had liked before? It's going to show up here. Your photos you like are going to show up here and you can easily retrieve them for later. If you click those little buttons, once again, you can remove them for likes, all that sort of stuff. All right, so I'm going to go back to the chat quickly. Meg asks, what is that tool? Was that the font combination tool? I did link to that in the handout, but another place you can find that is if you click on one of these. I'm going to do Discover. There we go. And then if you scroll down to the bottom, oh, come on. So one thing I don't like about Canva is that it's hard. Sometimes they frustrate. Okay, so for example, if you go to the design school, you scroll down to the bottom, it's going to have this resources right here. Because it's like this doesn't pop up on all of the pages, that's why I linked to it on your handout, because I found that frustrating. You can get to the font combinations tool here, which is this one we talked about earlier, and then the color wheel tool. Those are the two that I like the most. If, say, you have a color that you really like and you don't know what color would look good with it, you can pop in that color and it will show something that's complementary to it. So it's doing all that color theory work for you, which is kind of an awesome thing. Once again, you'll see this right here. This is a hex code. I put a link on your handout to a web page that explains what a hex code is. Basically, in web design, it's just a code for the red, green, and blue values that are in a color. So you'll either commonly see it like this, or you will see it as 3 numbers, like 0, 121, 52. Those are describing the red, green, and blue values in the color. So for example, of course I can't remember the hex code version, but that Vermont green color that I showed you before, the RGB value for that is 0, 121, 52. I memorized that because anytime I'm in some sort of design tool, I know if I want to get that Vermont green color, I just need to pop it in. For some reason, Canva only lets you use hex codes rather than RGB tools, but you can also, there are websites out there that will convert them from one to the other for you. But if you're curious about hex codes and all of that sort of stuff, take a look at that web page and it will explain it much better than I can. Okay, I don't have any other questions in the chat, but I am going to pause here to specifically ask you if there are any questions. So let me know. I will give you 15 seconds. And while we're talking about that, I am going to go back here, and I am going to, all right, no questions. I'm gonna move on. So before we make, Lois, can you say what you were clicking on rather than say click here? Yes, I can. Sorry about that. I can definitely do that from now on. Before we move on to creating a graphic together and then giving you some time to play with this on your own, I want to talk about accessible, excuse me, accessible design. So when I say accessible design, in my case today, I am thinking of designing for folks with visual impairments. So I don't necessarily mean just folks who are blind with total vision loss. There are plenty of other visual impairments where folks can still see, but there are certain things that make it hard for them. So we're talking about the whole spectrum of stuff. Obviously, if someone is totally blind, they are not going to see your Canva graphic, and you will have to make accommodations for that, and we will talk about that a little bit. I want to start off by referring back to that article I shared with you in the pre-reading, because I really liked how this person split up the certain elements of design into lenses. I thought that was a really useful tool and way to look at things. You'll see that there are several different lenses that this person mentions. A lot of them are really only relevant to web design. So like structure, keyboard, all of that kind of stuff, that involves, coding to make things more accessible when people are navigating a website. That's not really what we're doing here today. I'm definitely not an expert in that. So we are just going to be talking about the lenses that apply more to graphics, which would be color, images, font, and then readability. So when we're thinking about, let's start with color. When we're thinking about color and we are designing, we can think about accessible design for folks with visual impairments. But one, I guess, not trend, it's really taken hold now, is universal design. This has popped up in education, it has popped up in graphic design, and a lot of different venues. And that means rather than designing just for one particular group in mind, like the visually impaired group, you are designing something so that it is accessible to everyone and everyone benefits. So I do not have a visual impairment. However, reading bright yellow text on a white background is still hard for me. So not only is it hard for someone with a visual impairment, it is hard for me with no visual impairment. That's just the way eyes work. So you can either think of things, today we're going to look specifically with people with visual impairments, but when you are designing anything, you want to think of it with a universal concept. You want to make sure that everybody's going to be able to access resources, because typically whatever accommodations you make for one specific group are also helpful to other people. One great example is, adding a ramp to your library, of course, helps people with who are wheelchair users, but it also helps parents who are using strollers. It helps people who, are sore and don't want to walk up any stairs. It's all of that sort of stuff. One thing that helps one group usually helps the rest. We're thinking about things universally. But today, because we are focusing on visual graphics, we're going to focus on visual impairments. All right. So in terms of color, there is a simulator on one of the websites I recommend on the handout on WebAIM. Did I bring that up? Let me see. That shows, well, there are lots of simulators like this out there that shows what it looks like, what people with certain visual impairments see when they are looking at something. So in this particular article, this person focuses on color blindness. So for me, folks with normal vision, and I'm assuming most of you have normal vision, or this might be confusing. These are the colors, this is what they see, this is what it looks like. But folks with deuteranopia, these are the kind of colors that they see. Now you think, well, it's still a color, they can still see white and black. What's the big deal? Well, when you try and use color to convey meaning, and folks cannot see the color that you use to convey that meaning, that's a problem. So my number one rule for color is to not use it to convey meaning. You should be able, folks who are reading it in black and white, folks who are getting the crappy ink in their printer and trying to read whatever color the printer wants to spit out, anybody reading it should be able to get your gist without seeing the color. One issue that is, one example that is shown often are like subway maps where the different lines are in different colors. And if that's the only way you're distinguishing between the different lines, it's going to be really hard for people to get anywhere. So first order of business, don't use color to convey meaning. Let me open my handout, make sure I don't miss anything here. Once again, like I mentioned before, you just avoid the color yellow, really, unless it's a really deep, like mustard yellow. It's hard to read on a white background. It's okay on a black background, but it's just so bright that even if the contrast is okay, it can cause issues. So I would avoid yellow. And speaking of contrast, my final big bullet for color is that you should be using high contrast between your foreground and background colors so that text really stands out, things are disappearing into the background. And when they came up with the accessibility guidelines for websites, there is a specific ratio of color contrast that you should have. And I think it's a good, it does vary from like print to the web, because obviously those are different formats. But I think using, if you're creating something and just going to put it on social media, the ratios for the web, of course, make the most sense. I want to show you this contrast checker before we move on, because I would like for you to use this in, let's see. I would like for you to use this during your exercise. All right. So once again, there's those hex codes that we were talking about. But even if you don't know the hex codes, you can still play around with this a little bit. And I'll show you how to get those codes when you're designing in Canva. Somebody pop in the chat 2 different colors they think will have low contrast. And then we can test. I'll save the day if we don't get anybody, but it would be kind of fun. White and gray. All right. So let's say our background color is white, and that's all right here. Now, let's say we're going to do a really light gray color, like that. Can barely see it, right? This is the contrast ratio, 1.09 to 1. Not very good. It has failed on all accounts, no matter if it's large, if it's a normal size, it has failed. As you make this gray color darker, you will see that the contrast ratio is going up. Now, for the web, the ideal ratio where things are going to pass is 4.5, and I can't get it to go right on 4. Oh, see, even with this color, 4.5 isn't good enough. That's kind of like the standard is 4.5 to 1, but sometimes depending on the color, it's not good enough. So you want to make sure that it is passing on all accounts. And these WCAG are those guidelines I mentioned for web accessibility. So this one doesn't pass until it's at 7.22 to 1. So this means that, you know, most folks are going to find this readable. Now, when we're, again, thinking in terms of universal design, I personally do not have a visual impairment, but that is really hard to read. So if you are designing for everyone in mind, you're going to benefit everybody. So when you are mixing colors, and this is mostly for foreground to background sort of stuff, you know, I would also not recommend having really tons of really bright colors together, like hot pink and lime green, really super saturated together. That's also going to be really jarring, especially for people with visual impairments. But this is mostly for, you know, your foreground to your background. That's all I want to talk about with color for right now, because I don't want to run out of time. I want to keep moving on with other things. Again, if you have questions as we are going forward, please just pop them in the chat. And I want to get to sort of doing a quick design together before we, there we go. All right, lens of font. So when we are thinking about font, there are a couple of things that we're thinking about. The first thing that we are, and I'm looking at my handout right now under font and readability, just for those who are following along that way. I'm going to actually pull up my design tool here and start working right in here. Now, no matter if you're going, making something in print, on paper, or you're making it for the web, sans serif fonts are ideal. And those are fonts like Arial and Helvetica that aren't super stylized. They don't have little extra lines coming off of them. They don't, you know, they're not like a super cursive font with little ornamentations on them. They're just straight up words. And a good example of that would be something like this. This is a sans serif font. Now, the reason, and this actually still isn't a great font for a number of reasons, but if we're talking about serif versus sans serif, the little ornamentations on serif fonts can make letters look like different letters. And when you are using text, you want to make sure that the letter looks like the letter it is. and that it doesn't look too much like other letters. So this font is okay, but one thing that would be problematic for this is that this little, these little tail things here, this is kind of short. Like you really want this, the ascenders that go over the middle line, you want those to be pretty high so that people with visual impairments can be like, yes, that is a D. Because if your vision is kind of that could look like an A, you know? It could look like, you know, another letter that, you know, they're all kind of mushed together. So that's another thing I would recommend. Distinct letter shapes, and you want to have higher stems on them so that they're identifiable as letters, the letters that they actually are. The other thing on that handout is camel case. So what camel case is saying is using a mixture of capital and lowercase letters. It is for the same reason, to make the letters more identifiable. If we made this into all caps, do you see they all end on the same place? And you can't tell really where, you could have the potential of not knowing where one letter begins and the other begins. There are no ascenders and descenders, so discriminating between shapes of letters could be really hard. So I don't recommend using all caps. You want to use camel case so that these different letter shapes are more obvious. The other thing in terms of camel case that you can use outside of graphics when you're just posting on social media are for hashtags. I'm going to show you an example. So let's be super on the ball today and say we want to use the Black Lives Matter hashtag on a social media post. If you write it like this, if you write it like this, somebody's screen reader is going to go, they're going to read it like all in one big lumpy, as one big lumpy word. And if somebody is reading this with a visual impairment, and honestly, this happens to me with hashtags, and I don't have a visual impairment. You can't tell when one word ends and the other begins, and it renders the hashtag meaningless. So when you are putting hashtags on posts, you want to start out each word with a capital letter. When people are searching, it's not going to matter what case it is. It's just going to be easier for you to see and for everybody else to see if you do it this way, but it will still be searchable. You know, the same hashtag that everybody else is using. So that's one other thing I want to say about camel case. Again, this is like a no-brainer. Small font is hard to read for everyone, visual impairment or not. So make sure that your text size is big. And you want to make sure that if people try to enlarge your text, that it's still going to be readable. So this is, you know, when we have text like this, you know, native to this program, you know, no matter how big it is, it's going to be good. But say you have a logo and there's text in the logo. And this is another, this is another thing I don't recommend. Say there's text in the logo. If you try to expand that, it could become pixelated and people are not going to be able to read it regardless of whether or not they have a visual impairment. So I was trying this with some of these logos the other day. When you are just looking at this one like this, you know, it looks okay. But when you make it really big, it becomes less clear. This one's not horrible, but some you make them really big and it becomes very pixelated and nobody's going to be able to read it. So don't put text in an image like this. It's not recommended. And then the other thing I want to say about font, basically, when you're writing text, don't make it fancy. You know, avoid italicizing it. You know, don't underline it and italicize it too much. Sometimes the underline will touch the bottom of the letters, and that also makes it hard to distinguish letters. You want to make sure there's enough space between lines of text so that letters aren't running together. And although I am a huge word art fan, you know, having letters in swirling patterns is really hard to read for everyone, honestly. If you're trying to convey information, you want to make text just super, super readable. All right. I'm going to go quickly through images and icons because I want to quickly make an example for you all. So like for color before, images should not be the only thing in your graphic that is conveying meaning. And this goes for everyone. So say that you post an image onto social media, a graphic, and somebody has low bandwidth internet and the photo doesn't load. Well, they don't have a visual impairment, but they still can't see what you put up there. There was no caption, there was no alt text. They have no idea what you're posting. So again, the best practices for the visually impaired community benefit everybody. When you are posting something on social media, you want to make sure that you are also describing it elsewhere. So you are always adding a caption, basically describing exactly what is in the graphic, just in case people can't see it. And if you have the capability, you are adding alt text. So what alt text is something you sort of attach to the photo so that if people are using screen readers and they cannot see the image, the screen reader is going to read the alt text on that image, and people are going to have a basic idea of what the photo was, so that they aren't totally lost. Otherwise, we'll just say image, or we'll have the URL of the photo, which is not helpful at all. So there are some great articles out there about writing alt text. It should be very simple. So if I had, go back here. Let's choose a photo right here. You could say, you know, Black gentleman standing in front of a multicolored wall. You know, even that's a little bit too much. You could say Black gentleman standing in front of a wall. Something that just describes what is going on in the photo, so that people know what it is. And I'll show you, adding alt text is different for each social media platform. And one bad thing about Canva is that you can't add alt text right in Canva. You have to add it whenever you upload it. So that's kind of a bummer, but maybe we'll go to Facebook a little bit later and I can show you that. Excuse me. Use high resolution images if you can. A low resolution image, sort of like those ones that we used to see all the time back in the day, you know, very pixelated, grainy. If you even try to enlarge it even a little bit, you can't see what is in the picture. You want to use really high resolution images. And these stock photos, for example, are very high resolution. No matter how big I make this, no matter how much I zoom in, it's still a very high quality photo. So again, highly recommend Canva stock photos. And the images you use, just like your font, you want to make sure those are high contrast too. This is a beautiful photo, but there isn't much contrast between the background and this person. So it could kind of blend together if your eyesight wasn't, 100%. However, a photo like this, these all have higher contrast and people will be able to see what's going on there. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about photos. I'm going to pop on over to how do you know if images are high or low res? So it's the pixel count. And I actually think I included this on the handout because I'm not very good at explaining this. Let me make sure that I did. I didn't. When I send out a follow-up email, I will give you an article that kind of explains the difference between high resolution and low resolution photos, because I'm not a photography expert. I'm not great at explaining it. They are, and they will be able to do it better than I can. It's basically the number of pixels in your photo. The more pixels you have, the higher resolution it is, and the more rich and crisp your photo is. And then no matter if people are, making their screens bigger, enlarging things, it's still staying true to what is in the actual image. All right, so I'm gonna quickly I'm just gonna make a quick post and follow along. I'm going to try and be very explicit about what I'm doing. And then I am going to give you guys a little exercise to do. It is on that link I shared at the beginning on our webinar page with some instructions. I want you to test out the contrast checker and the font combination tool, all of that sort of stuff, keeping accessibility in mind. So when instead of making one, I am going to just show you one that I've already made because I'm running a little bit behind and I want to leave enough time for this exercise. So I am going to go back. To my home page here. All my designs. And I'm going to use this one. So this is by no means perfect, and I want to talk about why. This is one that I made for the virtual meetups that we've been having recently. And I want you to take a look at this image and pop in the chat. What do you think are some accessible elements of this design? And what do you think are some inaccessible elements of this design? I'm going to give you like a minute to put stuff in the chat, and then we will go over it. All right, so I'm trying to read messages on a computer that doesn't have a mouse, so scrolling is hard. Y'all picked out everything. So the main issue that folks pointed out is that the text is in all caps. that would make it hard for somebody to read. It's harder for them to distinguish letters. And, you know, this is the sort of size versus readability issue. You know, our tendency is to kind of just go quickly with all caps because we think it shows more emphasis. But, and I'm guilty of this too, which is probably why this graphic ended up this way, is that you need to be super thoughtful before you post graphics onto Facebook and keep all of these things in mind and just taking your time and really considering all of this sort of stuff. Slapping a quick graphic together like this undoubtedly was, it was all, I think the first one I made was, you know, over a month ago, is never a good idea. Another thing I saw about the font was that the lines of text were too close together. Absolutely, that's way too close together. It definitely blends in. Even I, if I'm just quickly glancing at it, it's way too close together, and I don't have a visual impairment. Another thing is, let's see. So some of the other issues were, let's see, there are lots of them. The dates might be better written out, absolutely. And when it comes to colors, I think the white in this Vermont green have a pretty high contrast. I don't know, again, I don't know the hex code for it, but if we're looking at the foreground versus, oh no, I can choose, nice. So it's not horrible, but it did fail. This is like, I think the AAA is the strictest accessibility guidelines. And when it's just normal text, it does fail. So the Vermont green and the white is not horrible, especially if it's bolded, and I usually do bold it. But if I did have text like this, it would fail on some accounts. So the color's not great, but it's not horrible. Now, again, in this case, I am limited to that color because it is our branding color, but making sure to not use very thin text, have some nice beefy text so it's really readable. Let's see, imagery is not especially helpful. Huh, that's interesting. I didn't get that one. I thought the people talking in the computer made sense with the meetup, virtual meetup. But hey, to each their own. And then some of the good things that have, excuse me, some of the accessible things were, the high contrast between colors. You know, it's not horrible. I didn't just put people talking in the computer. I did describe what was with text, which was going on. And yeah, overall, this is a very simple graphic. It's not super great. It's not awful. It served the purpose I was looking for at the time, and learn from me that you should go slow when you're making graphics. Y'all really picked up on those accessibility concepts right away. So I feel like we're kind of ready to jump into the exercise. Now, if you've never used Canva before, simple is better. I think you all know how to get to this page right now. Go to your, when you log in and you're in your home page right here, everybody's going to see the same thing. Just go to create a design. We're all going to do a Facebook post. And then I would start out, you know, don't make it too complicated. I would maybe even stick with the white background, just add some text and some photos, trying to align with those accessibility concepts that we were talking about. You can either drag it or you can just click on it. It's going to go to black automatically because it's a white background. You can change the color up here. All of this kind of stuff is very similar to Microsoft Word or anything like that. So I don't think you'll have too much trouble figuring it out. If you want to try one of these font combinations that have already been made, feel free. Carrie, yes, I did recommend creating a Canva account for this exercise. I don't have a practice link for you. So if you do use one of these, you can just click on it, highlight it, and you can change the wild sale, we'll say summer sale. You can change the text, all of that sort of stuff. So I'm gonna let you guys play around with it. Let me pull up the exercise on my screen here. Oh, that's not it. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. Zoom. So your exercise is right here. So I would like for you to make a graphic advertising your library's book sale to your community. The graphic will be posted on Facebook, so definitely use that Facebook post template. The graphic should have the date range and location of the sale, as well as the prices of different items. And by that I mean DVDs, hardcovers, paperbacks, that sort of thing. You can have as much detail or as little as you want. I'd like you to pop in an image or an icon. And I'd really like for you to focus on accessible design in terms of font and color. More than anything, but definitely keep those images and icon and readability concepts in mind as well. The readability and font and color kind of all go together. On the screen, you will see links to get to that contrast checker I was talking about, I showed you earlier, and the font combination tool. So I think that's everything that you will need here. I will be answering questions in the chat. I may have to pull down these directions to answer any questions. So again, you can find this at libraries.vermont.gov/Canva accessible design. And yeah, let's take about 10 minutes. And then if I can make some of you, whoever would like to share their graphic, I can make you a presenter, and it should be able to share your desktop. So if you would like to share, just make sure you have your Canva exercise up on the screen and not anything else you don't want anybody else to see. And I think that will be the best way to do it. All right, so get started. Let's meet back here at like 11:49. If you are not participating in the exercise, either you don't have a Canva account yet, et cetera, take a look at some of these materials that are posted under additional materials here. The Smithsonian Guide it was actually made in 2001, but it's still really good. They made in guidelines for accessible print publications, but a lot of the recommendations in there are applicable to your Canva graphics and everything else. This article in Marketing Libraries Journal is about social media in general, making it inclusive and accessible, but I highly recommend it. And then web accessibility in mind is the website where this contrast checker is, but it has tutorials, it has articles explaining different accessibility issues. A lot of it is for web design, but some of it is sort of the font color stuff that we've already been talking about. And if you ever want to delve into web design, this is going to be a great resource for you. So if you're not participating in the exercise, go check out some of those resources. And for those who are, I'll see you back in like 9-10 minutes. All right. How do you change the background color? Someone asked. All right. So if you go down to here, to backgrounds, if you want to choose one of these backgrounds, you just click on it and it will pop up. Or if you just want to make it a solid color, you can go to the top here. There are a bunch of colors for you to choose from, or you can kind of be fancy and go to this little palette here, click on this, and then you can choose, just click around and you can choose anything you want. And that's going to show you, when you do that, the hex code, that if you want to check your contrast in the contrast checker, you can just pop that in over here and that will show you your contrast. All right. Okay. Okay, what does the circle with the two circling arrows mean when an image is chosen? Let me hop over and see. Oh, this one right here, that's going to rotate your photo. So to if you hold it and you turn it, that's going to circle it around. So that's just for rotating. 0. There you go. I'm trying out a template and I'm having trouble changing the size of the text boxes within the template. So the thing about the templates is that sometimes they're locked so that if you change one, it changes all of the other ones. What I would recommend is ungrouping them, and then you should be able, it would let me highlight something. You should be able to just change one or the other. See, I just made that one super small. And then I can just change this rather than all of them. So is that that little locking thing up here. If you use a template with an image, can you change the image? Yes. So let's go. Get rid of all this stuff here. All right, so say I want one with like a concrete image here. Here we go. All right. So if you click on it like this, you can press that little trash can and you can either delete this image in here, just that one, or you can delete this entire grid. So say you wanted a different dish in there, you could just delete that image and then you could drag, I don't know, none of these are of food, they're all of people. Here we go. You can drag another image in here like that. So yes, you can change images. Noreen, It didn't save my image in Canva. Was I supposed to hit save somewhere? Nope, it saves for you automatically. So I just made this one for example. All changes saved. I'm just going to get out of it. When I go to all my designs, and I go on the one that I most recently did, I'd have to refresh. Let me see. There it goes. You may have to refresh the page to see it in your designs, but if you are in there for more than 1 second, it's saved whatever you did. So you can just go back to your home page, all your designs. You may have to refresh and then it will show up. All right. Is anybody interested in sharing their design? Pop it in the chat. And well, don't pop your design in the chat. Say you would like to share in the chat and I can make you a presenter. And explain your graphic and how it is, what you did, what your thought process was.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So this is my first time using Canva, so it's a little rudimentary, but we have a very historic library, so I just imagined that it might be fun to have an antique book sale. We're not actually going to have one. So I found this graphic and I captioned it with a photo credit and a description. So it's a collection of antique books. And then I didn't want to use black text on the white because I thought it looked a little harsh and I was going for more of like a vintage vibe, but I still wanted to keep the contrast. So I went with a dark grayish brown that still met the contrast parameters, but wasn't just stark black. And I selected a text theme. I forget the name of it, but it was one of the free offerings. And then I just typed in there, and I didn't have time to do anything really fancy beyond that, but that's what I did.
Awesome. This is exactly what I wanted you to do for this first exercise. This is great. Easy to read, have a graphic for some context. The screen reader is not going to pick up that caption if they can't see anything and they're just using a screen reader. But that kind of description, a collection of antique books, would be perfect for alt text. If somebody saw, you know, if the screen reader was reading this, well, they would read the alt text for the whole graphic. But you could say graphic about Bradford Public Library book sale. If you were just posting a picture of these books, that would be really good alt text, a collection of antique books. Does anybody else want to share your images? So once you've completed your design, if once again, you can publish directly to Facebook, but you would have to connect your account. I don't like to do that because I like having more control. So I personally like to download it and then go to Facebook separately and put it up. But if you click this little arrow right here, so I put a link on your handout about what different images mean. So a PNG or a JPEG is the one you would click for something like this. I usually do a PNG, excuse me, and then you click download. It's going to say preparing your design. And then you're going to want to make sure to save it. If you just open it, then it will open it in whatever program is selected, and then you're going to have to save it again. But just save it like this. It will ask you what folder you want to put it in. That's up to you. I recommend, of course, making a separate graphics folder. I'm not going to do that right now. I'll go on my downloads. Now I have it forever. There we go. And then it's also going to show up in my designs. So Are there any last minute questions before I say goodbye? Give you my ending spiel. You can also, of course, always email me if you have any questions. Once again, I am not the super top expert on any of this stuff. There are tons of tutorials out there with actual graphic designers who went to school for this. But in the meantime, I'm always happy to help you any way I can. I am going to send you a follow-up email. Hopefully we can get that ally graphic that was mentioned. I'll send that out. And if somebody else would like to share their book sale graphic that they made, you can just email that to me. In that follow-up email, I'll have a few other links I think will be helpful, as well as an evaluation to this webinar. Please fill out the evaluation. It helps us make our workshops better, and your feedback is so appreciated and helpful. And this was recorded. Again, I missed recording a little part of the beginning, but I will try and get this up as soon as I can. I have some other videos that I need to try and get up as well. But as somebody sort of mentioned in the chat, the best way to learn how to use Canva is just to fool around. That's mostly how I learned how to use it. Just fool around, trial and error, test stuff out. And again, I recommend reading up on the WebAIM website, those Smithsonian publication guidelines and some of the other links that I put in the handout. In this page, that link I shared to this page, you know, that's not going to go away. So you can always go back there and find anything you need again. So again, thank you so much for coming. Be on the lookout for that follow-up email, and look forward to seeing all of your fun designs on Facebook and Instagram coming up. Thank you.